Welcome back. In this video, I'll take you through my painting process and share 6 key tips that can make a real difference in your portraits. Let's dive in. I begin by sketching the composition using burnt sienna mixed with Gamsol. The Gamsol helps dilute the paint, making it flow easily while also drying fast, perfect for an underpainting. I've noticed that some artists try to make their sketches as precise as possible, ensuring every feature is in the exact spot. But my approach is a little different. Instead of aiming for a perfect outline, I prefer to loosely position the facial features. Because when you observe anything in color, you'll notice that color can create an illusion. It shifts how we perceive shapes and values. Even if your monochrome sketch looks accurate, once you start adding color, things will naturally change. So, I allow some flexibility in my sketch to adjust as I go. Now I'm adding contrast to bring dimension to the portrait. Contrast is a powerful tool in painting, and there are many different ways to use it. Here I'm using brightness contrast, pushing the lights and darks to sculpt the facial features. At the same time, I'm also playing with color temperature contrast, balancing warm and cool tones to create more depth. When I first started painting, I struggled with contrast. I remember looking at my paintings and feeling like something was missing, but I couldn't quite figure out what. My values were too close together, and the forms looked flat. It wasn't until I actively started pushing the contrast, making the lights brighter, the shadows deeper, and playing with warm and cool tones, that I started seeing my portraits come to life. I realized that contrast isn't just about making things look realistic, it's about creating drama, mood, and structure. I like to keep the whole painting progressing at a similar pace. Some artists prefer to start with a single area, like an eye, and fully refine it before moving on. I find it more effective to develop everything together. Once I feel the facial features are about 25% complete, I shift my focus to the foreground and background. Adding atmosphere early helps unify the painting and keeps everything feeling balanced as it develops. I don't want the face to look like it's floating separately from the background, the clothing, or even the atmosphere around it. That's why I constantly jump between the foreground, background, and facial features, making sure everything moves forward at a similar pace. This helps me avoid the problem of having a fully rendered face with a background that feels disconnected or rushed at the end. I'm carefully refining the edges because the contour line plays a crucial role in a portrait. It can be dynamic and expressive, but one thing I don't want to leave a noticeable gap between the face and the background. A well-handled contour helps add dimension and makes the subject pop from the canvas. I'm adding some complementary colors to the florals around the portrait to create more visual interest and balance. If you're still struggling with color choices, here's a simple formula to start with. 75% primary color plus 20% complementary color plus 5% accent color. This helps create harmony without overwhelming the composition. Once you master color selection, don't be afraid to experiment. Bend the rules, break the formula, and see what unexpected results you can create. When I was in art school, I didn't have a naturally sharp color sense like some of my classmates. I remember watching them paint simple still life setups. They could pull out so many subtle colors from a single piece of fabric. Their paintings were full of rich, vibrant hues, while I could barely see those variations. If you've ever felt the same way, it's totally fine. I realized that even if I couldn't naturally see all those colors, I could learn to use them by studying color theory and applying that knowledge to my work. For example, when painting a white object under a bright yellow light, I know the shadows shouldn't just be gray. They need hints of blue or purple to create contrast and depth. Little things like this help bring a painting to life, even if the colors aren't immediately obvious to the eye. don't know about you, but I really enjoy this part, the detail stage. There's something so satisfying about switching between a big fan brush for softness and a fine detail brush to refine the edges, paint eyelashes, and add delicate hair strands. But I've learned not to rush into this stage too early. As tempting as it is to jump straight into details, I know that everything before this, the big shapes, the color balance, structure, is the foundation. Without a solid foundation, all these beautiful details would just be superficial. As I near the finish line, I take a step back and look at the painting as a whole. This is one of the most important parts of the process, not just adding final details, but making sure everything feels cohesive and balanced. I go over the edges, deciding which ones should stay soft and which need to be sharper. Sometimes, the slightest adjustment to an edge can completely change the mood and expression of the portrait. I also take a moment to assess the color balance, making sure the interplay between warm and cool tones brings enough depth and harmony to the painting. At this stage, I like to take a quick photo of the painting on my phone. Looking at it through a screen gives me a fresh perspective. It's a simple trick that helps me catch imbalances that I might overlook after staring at the canvas for hours. If something feels off, I make small refinements, adjusting values, tweaking colors, or reinforcing key highlights. But as tempting as it is to keep making adjustments, I remind myself not to overwork it. It's easy to fall into the trap of chasing perfection, adding tiny brushstrokes endlessly. But sometimes, the best decision is to step back and let the painting breathe. So instead of obsessing over details, I focus on capturing the essence, the energy, the presence, and the life within the subject. Because in the end, a great portrait isn't about rendering every single detail perfectly. It's about making it feel alive on the canvas. I remember someone once asked me, "How do you know when to stop?" And I said, "When I stop hating it." And with that, this piece is finally complete. If you have any questions about painting, whether it's about technique, materials, or anything else, leave a comment below, and I'd be happy to help. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.